some of the things that have been done, of course, they're not mass extermination camps, but the level of dishonesty and malevolence does need some sort of accountability. And so I do think people should face legal consequences for this. I'll give you an example. So if people don't know what Raiku does, it engages in what is called controlled spontaneity exercises as soon as a terror attack happens. And what this entails is busing imams out to the site of the terror attack, taking photos, releasing prefabricated hashtag campaigns online, using bot accounts to amplify this. The military has a cyber warfare division called the 77th Brigade, which not only monitors the lawful speech of citizens, but also uses bots to attack them in the comments or amplify narratives the government wants. And it also stages events and controls the front pages of newspapers and media coverage on television to ensure the government message gets out there. Good example of this is the 2017 Manchester arena bombing. Don't Look Back in Anger was centrally planned by the government.
Explain what that is for those who don't remember.
Don't Look Back in Anger was the message that was immediately broadcast after the Abedi brothers made a pressure cooker nail bomb and walked into an Ariana Grande concert and killed, I think it was about 20 people, including many children. The government's message before the bodies of those girls were even cold and identified by their parents was, you can't be upset about this. So they helped orchestrate the messages, they helped orchestrate the concert afterwards. And we know this because disaster planner Lucy Easthope actually wrote in The Guardian a little while after saying that messages of resilience and the message that we will overcome might not have been the right one. We were a bit too soon. So her conscience was nagging at her about the fact that there was not a period for reflection. Immediately rushed out the door by Raiku was this message of, you can't look back on this. You have to keep looking forward. Don't blame the people that were basically accountable.
And you think this was partly influenced by Islamism itself, not just sort of white people going like, oh gosh, I don't want anyone to be racist. Like there was actually an Islamist pressure on this.
So we know some of the people involved in this. History of Raiku is interesting. So in 2011, Richard Chalk, who used to work for a PR firm called Bell Pottinger, and the CEO of which, I think it was in 2007, was Blair's former communications director, who was also, I think, married to one of the editors that oversaw Alistair Campbell's pieces in the Daily Mirror. So it's a very incestuous network. But Richard Chalk worked for Bell Pottinger out in Iraq. All of his work is classified, so we don't know what he actually did. But as soon as he came back, he went to work for Raiku. He was the chief of staff to Baroness Saida Vorsi while she was the head of the Conservative Party. Now, Baroness Vorsi herself, I'll be careful what I say because she's very litigious, particularly towards Richard Kemp. However, she herself has admitted to working with MEND, which is a Muslim group that she described as, although not illegal, definitely illiberal. And MEND has had some questionable stances on things like Israel-Gaza. Let's put it that way. Under Raiku, it was headed, the deputy head of Raiku was Sabrina Khan. Now, her sister is Dame Sarah Khan, who people might be aware of as the government's supposed independent counter-extremism advisor. After 7/7 in 2005, she was appointed to its anti-extremism task force. She worked for the Home Office for about 20-odd years. She was then appointed under Theresa May, while Prime Minister, and Amber Rudd as Home Secretary, the Home Office sort of lead advisor on counter-extremism, and then Boris Johnson appointed her the independent advisor on counter-extremism. The reason I say all this is because she, in her career, has been myopically focused on the far right while airbrushing the reputation of Islam. Best example, she founded a charity called Inspire, which aimed to, in her own words, show the true face of Islam in Britain. And at the launch of Inspire, she took a photo in front of a woman in a Union Jack hijab with Theresa May, who was then the Home Secretary. And through emails procured via Freedom of Information Access request, we found out that the image was created by a company called Breakthrough Media, which has ties with the Home Office, and Raiku called it Our Product. When Alan Henning was beheaded by ISIS on camera in 2014, that was the front cover of the Sun newspaper.
Yes.
It was that image. And so this idea that Islam must be protected from public blowback anytime someone reads the Quran a bit too seriously and commits a jihadist attack, and it is directed by second-generation Pakistani immigrants who themselves aim to be an authority on the acceptable face of Islam, means that the chief concern of the government is not sort of woolly white liberal appeasement, but is a kind of religious in-group preference and a concern about advancing the interests of Islam without attracting too much criticism. And this has happened through multiple terror attacks. One of the examples where they kind of overplayed their hand was actually the Nottingham stabbings, where Valdo Calacane killed those 2 university students and that poor caretaker. Immediately afterwards, they had a big event. And you had community leaders, including imams and Sikhs, lined up behind the parents. You had the big banners of one Nottingham, one together that were rapidly printed. And you had the families stood up, and the families said, in a state of distress, hold no hate for any religion or ethnicity or race in your heart. Now, that had nothing to do with anything. Valdo Calacane was a complete schizo who was not a Muslim and is now confined to a hospital for the rest of his life rather than a prison. I think many of us have issues with that, but by the by, since then, one of the victims' mothers has come out and said, I don't feel any sympathy for Valdo Calacane's parents. They brought him to this country. It's his fault that my kids are dead. So when the hold of the state is relinquished, then the true feelings come out. But it looks like the state absolutely jumped the gun with its disaster planning there to send out the same message they did after Manchester Arena, the same message they did after Alan Henning, the same message they did after London Bridge, time and time again. And the message is always, don't blame Islam for the terror attacks that the followers of Islam commit.
Ironically, it pisses off the local people more, because I can understand some people being like, oh gosh, we don't want riots, we don't want people to start going out and attacking Muslims or whatever, let's put this kind of message out there. 91% watching Heretics clips are not subscribed. Quick favor, hit subscribe, free, takes 2 seconds, and helps us question everything together.